It's the 1st of April, and no, this isn't an April Fool's joke. The seasons have actually changed. If you're in South Africa, it means we go from our glorious, amazing heat to, depending where you are in the country, incredibly wet, slushy, or freezing cold temperatures. However, what that means is we are in a time of transition. Gardens, ecosystems, nature, and even us as people now start going through change. What that means for our garden is we now need to start getting ready for winter. And part of getting ready for winter is removing all of the tired, old, dead summer plants that have stopped producing or really aren't producing to the quality they should, and replacing them with new winter seedlings. So this video is everything you need to know about autumn planting, what seeds you need to plant in autumn for your winter vegetable garden, and also just some tips and tricks around best practices when you get your seeds going, some of the techniques I use just to give you the best possible chance of growing as much food as you possibly can in a season that is not always hot and sunny. So let's get into it, and I hope you get some value, and I hope that you get started with your planting. So you need to get some winter veggies in the ground and you have no clue where to start or what to do. Don't worry, I'm here to help. First of all, let's go through the bare basics. What do you need? First of all, you need seeds. Doesn't matter what format they are, what brand they are, you need seeds. Then seeds can't grow without soil, so you need compost. I use compost from the garden that I make from food scraps, and I've also got some leftover seedling mix that I bought, and quite honestly there's no difference in the germination to me. Compost actually has stronger growth because there's a lot more natural nutrients in it, but that's a story for another time. And then obviously you need a container to grow them in. For me personally, I really like these styrofoam seedling trays. The reason being is that they do not allow for temperature fluctuation. I find that's a big thing when it comes to seedlings, and thin little plastic trays have very big temperature variance, where the polystyrene seedling trays keep a relatively constant temperature. And I also have been reusing these for a really long time. So polystyrene, I know it's not great for the environment, but they last significantly longer than the plastic. I find the little plastic trays, you use them once or twice, they become so brittle that they just actually crack. So that's a really good option for me. And then what I use is, you'll see I have a big black tray at the bottom with no holes. And the reason for that is, and we'll get to it later, is bottom watering. I only bottom water my seeds. So in essence, if you have seeds, you have soil, you have a pot, a yogurt tub, anything you can really find to plant it in, then you're good to go. Then there are some other options to make sure that you actually know what you're doing, and that includes things like labels, whether you use wooden ones. I've done a little video on how to convert a yogurt tub into marker tabs, so you can do that as well. There are a lot of extra little things that you can add on, but if you have that, you have the bare basics to get done. And now I want to just have a quick chat around zones and regions. So I'm in Cape Town in South Africa, and we have an incredibly wet, damp, not ice cold, but relatively cold winter. Whereas further up north in the high veld in South Africa, it is very cold, it doesn't rain, and so it's very dry. Very different temperatures, which then allows you to grow different things, but also a lot of the same things. You just have different ways of treating them, and different pests, diseases, bacteria, fungi, all of that you experience in the different areas. So right now, your autumn planting, pretty much across the board, the whole of South Africa, is planting the same stuff. So I'm going to include a list in the description of what you should be planting now for winter, but things to include that you can plant in seedling trays. And let me just add to that I grow pretty much everything in seedling trays. The only things I don't plant in trays, it's garlic, all of my green manures, and my carrots. Those, there might be one or two others, but those are pretty much the only things that I direct sow. Oh, and peas, sorry. Peas, because I find that peas do not transplant very well. That's just been my experience. But everything else I plant in seedling trays. Rutabagas, beetroots, turnips, those all transplant really, really well. I've also got cauliflower, kale, broccoli, kohlrabi, you name it. All of those transplant really well. And now into what you should actually be planting now. That list is quite big, and it includes things like all of your brassicas. So that is kale, broccoli, cauliflower, kohlrabi. There's so many different types of each one. You should be looking at your turnips, your rutabagas, a lot of your root veg you can get in the ground now, or into seedling trays. Then things like leeks, celery, endives, your mustards, pak choi, the whole Asian family. Those should all be started now as well. So it's a pretty extensive list. And the reason why I'm only doing this now is I know in Cape Town, our summer temperatures push right into the end of March. And in the past, when I planted these seedlings too early, they became super leggy, and some of them even bolted because it was just too hot. So for me, I like to get things going in the beginning of April. It's still warm enough, but it's cool enough for these winter plants to really start growing into their own. So now you've got your seedling trays, you've got your compost, and you've got your seeds. Now what you're going to do is plant them. And this process is super, super straightforward. I'm going to show you, these are Rutabaga seeds. I got them from a really, really awesome South African seed company called Living Seeds. They got really, really good quality seeds and a really big variety. And what I'm going to do with these Rutabagas, I'm going to put them in my hand. And I'm going to put 2 to 3 on top of the soil in each cell. Why I'm doing 2 to 3 is I like to pick the strongest ones. So if you have both germinate, great. If you really wanted to, you could separate them. And alternatively, if you don't have the space, what you can do is just snip the weakest one and keep the strongest one. So what I do, you can see, is I just drop the seeds on top. And then it's as simple as literally 1/2 centimeter. Just push it down. See, I'm not pushing it down very deep at all. And then I just take the corners and bring the corners into the middle where the seed was, just to lightly cover up the seeds. You do not want these seeds to be very deeply covered, especially with a change in season with not a lot of light. The temperatures are getting cooler. You want to make sure that they can still reach some light and experience some heat, and this is where the polystyrene comes into play really nicely. And that is as simple as that. I've done 12 modules in a couple of seconds, dropped 2 in each one. There's a whole bunch of rutabagas done. In this tray as well, I've got cauliflowers, red Russian, Nero kale, and then it's the first time I'm trying this raw broccoli. I find, just personally here in Cape Town, I've not had much success with broccoli. They grow beautifully, but they very seldom have big luscious heads, where this is more of a broccolini type plant. So giving this a go and hoping for the best. And then something I just wanted to show you is the difference in soil color and quality between homemade compost. Just look at that color and the texture, it's just absolutely gorgeous, compared to very airy, fluffy, perfectly ideal environment for seeds with a seedling mix. But you know what? If you look at nature, nature thrives in this. Plants that bolt and go to seed, they just drop on the floor and they germinate. So if you have homemade compost, use that. You don't need to spend extra money on seedling mixes. It's just not really that necessary. And now what I want to talk about is watering. Watering your seedlings once they emerge is incredibly important, but so is not overwatering them. The technique I like to use is bottom watering. So that's why it's so important to have this bottom tray with no holes in it. So all I do, take a can of water and then I pour the water into the bottom tray and just messing a bit, and just let it fill up. I fill it about 3/4 of the way up. Sometimes if the soil is really dry, then the little modules will actually start floating, because polystyrene likes floating. But what this allows you to do is not disrupt any of the soil on top. And then we can just adjust these. And within a few hours, this light textured soil, which is really fluffy and really dry, is going to look like this. It's not going to be overly wet and soggy at the top. It's going to be just moist. And at the bottom, it's going to be significantly more wet. So what's really nice about this is you have a very consistent moisture level at the top that's never wet. And if any of you have grown seedlings before, you know wet surfaces lead to dampening off, which is a horrible situation where your seedlings start growing beautifully and then suddenly, as the soil touches the plant stem, they fall over and die. So I find that overwatering at the top of the seedlings does cause that, where I have significantly less of an issue with the bottom watering and that situation. Also what happens is you can control the water, so as soon as the color starts changing and it's all pulled through to the top, you just simply pick this up, tilt it out, throw the remaining water out. When you want to water again, you just take the jug, fill up the bottom one, and then it's done. It's really as simple as that. You're not disrupting seeds that you've just planted that might be really, really small. They're not being displaced, falling over, washing away. Watering. So now you should know what you need to get ready for your winter planting, how to plant your seeds in terms of depth and process, and then how to water them. The next video I'll do is how to transplant them, because that's quite an important step as well. But please subscribe to the channel so you can stay updated with these things that I do.